Veteran master pastry chef Gert Sorensen has, over a long career, worked at the Savoy Hotel in London and the Atlantic Hotel in Hamburg. He's taught pastry for 28 years at a Copenhagen hotel and restaurant school, as well as being caterer for the royal family.
Growing up, my father was a renowned pastry chef, known all over Europe for confectionery feats like the Guinness Book of Records tallest wedding cake, or being the pastry chef to the royal family. In the sea of amazing dishes and wonderful conversations that we've been a part of, it occurred to me we haven't really stretched into the territory of pastries. Having spent the first part of my life in a pastry shop, cakes and sweets hold a special place in my heart. Waking up early in the morning to roll out the dough, almond paste and cake batter. They all bring me back in time. Ultimately, I chose the hot kitchen over the life of a pastry chef, but the lessons I learned making them made it inevitable that I would find myself looking for that old connection here in St. Louis. As a chef, I need to stay curious in order to evolve. For me, that means looking beyond a great meal to learn more about who made it and what inspires them to cook. Every great city has great food. I'm going on a journey around the world right here in St. Louis to find good food and experience other cultures. I'm on a quest to find passionate chefs who cooks from the heart. Because food is love.
It's gonna be delicious.
Food is love. Love your food. All around the world, culture shares the morning tradition of coffee and some sort of pastry. In Denmark, we ate Berliners. In New Orleans, they have beignets. If you're in Paris, it could be a croissant. I can go on all day. Generally speaking, donuts are a crowd favorite in America. But where do they fall in the scheme of things? Are they not a pastry as well? For the sake of argument and differentiation, I'm visiting Vincent Van Doughnut to learn more about where donuts come from. This is Vincent Marston. His obsession with donuts has led him into a life of stretching dough and the boundaries of donut flavors. He has agreed to condense his knowledge into a quick lesson in donut making. I grew up, in a little town where we went to the baker and we got donuts in the morning. They were called Berliners.
Yeah, sure.
You two of us, if we were eating a donut, the idea is you try to eat that donut without licking your lips. Your brain automatically want to swipe the sugar off of your lips.
That's
That's the test of if you have total control over your body.
It sounds like a good challenge.
Yeah, it's a great donut challenge.
That's good.
My dad had a pastry shop. We had like 700 people every day, and they made all different kinds of pastries.
Holy cow. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've made donuts.
No, and this is why we're here. Of all the things I've ever learned, I've never learned how to make donuts. I've never made donuts. We never had a fryer.
So we don't crack our eggs either. We use liquid eggs.
Okay.
So
that's the liquid base of a donut is
eggs and water. There is water.
Okay.
Yeah. Granulated sugar, the same stuff that's on your Berliners. A milk replacer, which is basically whey protein. For a warm spice, we do add nutmeg. The fat we use is an all-purpose shortening, so it's a vegetable shortening. The idea for donuts is you have to put enough fat inside the donut, so when you drop it in the oil, it rejects the fat on the outside. That's why temperature is very important, and so is your fat content. Salt. We use just a regular old table salt. This is bread flour. It's a higher protein bread flour. We'll go ahead and we'll add this dry ingredient with the fat here, and then our yeast. So I use a SAF Instant. We started with the 1960 Grumman Olsen step van. My brother had a restaurant at the time too, so I was able to use his restaurant as a commissary. Okay. And I figured that was a recoupable investment if it didn't work. Yeah. Kind of a market test type thing, but it did work. The one thing that I wanted to do was be unique and do something different. So we do everything from scratch. And that was, we had purveyors that tried to sell us on bag mixes and that type of stuff to make it easy. And that's tempting, but that's honestly what everyone else is doing. But if we can make it lemon curds, a lot of the fillings, the doughs, we do a chocolate sour cream old fashioned, a vanilla sour cream old fashioned, we do our yeast dough, we do our vegan dough, all that stuff is from scratch. And that's what we pride ourselves on and what separates us. And we do 20 different flavors a day. And this display up here, and once those are gone, they're gone.
So it's almost like what you're doing is craft donut, because 20, 30 years ago, a donut was just a donut.
That's what it
there
was.
was nothing there.
Right.
And now everybody is getting excited about donuts because we are mixing all these different flavors and flavors. And
so it's fun. The pastry stuff, like your father and you, the artistry behind it.
I mean, it's an experience to eat a donut. It's not just a donut with your coffee.
Absolutely. Well, and you can still have that. There's nothing wrong with those classics either. Those very traditional, original, just the vanilla glazed, or even some people even request just a plain old sour cream old fashioned with no glaze. Cake donut, those are the old schoolers that like to dunk it in their coffee, and they don't want the sugar, they don't want all that stuff. So that's when it becomes, I've been vertically challenged my whole life and getting that thing up on the on the bench. So there's our dough. I don't mess with it. When it comes out, sometimes you'll see people kneading it. It's already done that for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So I try not to disturb it too much. So once it gets on the bench, I just dump it out and then I'll start rolling. Again, what we do, I mean, you're stretching. You're not wanting to push from one side because then you're pushing everything one way. You're pulling the dough. So we always go from the center out. Like this. I'll take the heavy pin and I'll get on top of it again for being, 5'7" my whole life. But you can try it. Yeah. And push out from the centers and then roll sideways.
See, I always like take the dough like this to make sure.
Yep. So you saw a little stick in there. Yeah. So we've got our flour. If you want to roll back. Because it'll crease like that, and you won't, About a ½ an inch is what you're looking for all around. Stretch it out, and then let air underneath it, and let it pull back. Just kind of get used to it, but you've got it. That was pretty much perfect.
Not bad for a first time.
Absolutely. You've probably used something similar to this before, which is usually for caramels and whatnot. We do it to where it's 3 1/4 inches apart. We're just kind of scoring the top, but this gives us a nice square. But what we do is we use the holes too. We sell these holes, which is what you had, which are quite literally the hole from the donut there. Yeah, these look great.
Get better.
They're going to be, but you'll see from the ones that we already have in there, they're going to be big.
Well, I want to earn a spot on the donut team, you know what I mean?
Hey, after this, if we ever have an employee call off, I may give you a call and see if you can cover a shift. We do kids classes too, which is great. My son is Vincent Van. Okay. So it's named after the van, Vincent Van Gogh. So we do, because we do artisanal style donuts. Yeah. And Vincent Van Marsden is my now 11-year-old. Okay. So it's kind of a triple play on words. We get to feed people with fondness, smiles, happiness, that type of thing. Food is love, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's easy to overlook the intricacies in donut making. We grab a dozen and they disappear so quickly that we never even pause to think about how much effort went into them.
But a good way to look is you can see right there, these are actually just a hair too long. But that's it. One stick steadies, one stick flips. There's that skunk line. And that means that they've proofed properly. That's it. That's got the skunk line, so you know it's a perfect proofing.
Wow.
And you see how it just sticks.
It seems simple, but that's part of the beauty of it. Although we didn't make donuts in my father's shop, what I learned there made me feel right at home here. I think back now as an older person. I'm 53 years old, and when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, there was some point where I thought my dad was nuts. He would say stuff, and I'm like, this guy is crazy.
Sure.
And all of a sudden I start saying the same things my dad told me, and I'm like, what's going on here? And I realized as I got a little bit older that, that was the most important thing I got from my parents, was all of those things that gave me the ability to do the things I do today and adapt to changes.
Now you've got donuts in your repertoire.
I know. I mean, and
it makes you a stronger. Is your dad still alive?
No, unfortunately not.
Well, he's proud of you, I'm sure.
He would have loved to stood here next to me today and interacted with us and all this stuff. It's already time for Vincent to begin to prepping for tomorrow's donuts. And I'm sure I've been in his way enough for one day.
It's awesome, and it's really rewarding to be able to see the smiles that it brings in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like even our sign, like, all you need is love and maybe a donut. Well, all I really want to see is, you know, the smiles from people coming in.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Just awesome.
Do you want to take these with you?
Absolutely. Another essential component of morning nourishment that is undoubtedly a part of my everyday and something that's played an integral role in the production of this show is, of course, coffee. As essential as we all can agree that it is, the journey that coffee beans must go on before becoming what we mindlessly seek out to guzzle every morning is somewhat of a complex thing. To get a better idea what that entails, I'm here at Kaldi Coffee Roasters to demystify the coffee bean. This place looks more like a lab than the relaxed coffee shop atmosphere you tend to think of. That's because it is a lab, and the research that goes on here, it's all to make sure you get the best cup possible. You know, there's something personal about coffee because it also says a lot about you as a person, you know, how you take your coffee and how you make it.
What I'm doing right here is just a hand brew drip method.
So obviously you're a coffee geek.
I would say it's pretty fair to put me in that wheelhouse. I've been with Kaldi's for about 15 years. There's a lot of hard work that goes into a cup of coffee. At the farm, hand picking the coffee beans or the coffee cherry, processing the coffee in the best way possible, and then, you know, shipping the coffee in an ergonomical way that's going to make sense for that origin.
So when you say cherry, you're referring to the bean?
Yeah, so coffee is the seed of a fruit. It's not necessarily just like a bean. It is a seed of a fruit, and inside that fruit are 2 seeds typically. And then throughout the process of picking and harvesting that coffee, and then depending on what kind of washed, natural, semi-washed honey process that it goes through in order to get that fruit off the coffee, you're left with 2 seeds. And it's those 2 seeds that we as roasters are roasting and that you as a consumer are drinking.
What about maybe have a donut or a pastry with your coffee?
I am not above a donut with coffee.
Have you ever had the chocolate croissant at La Choquette?
No, I have not had the chocolate croissant.
Yeah, you know, I've heard a lot about it, and at some point I'm going to try it.
With a chocolate croissant, I might pair it with a nice espresso rather than just a cup of coffee.
So Kaldi's, is that the name of the original family that had it, or?
Actually, Kaldi's is the name of the fabled Ethiopian goat herder that discovered coffee. The Ethiopian goat herder that was herding his goats. He fell asleep, as goat herders do, and woke up and could not find his goats. He climbed a mountain to see the dancing and not so much the lazy goats that he was used to, and was wondering what had happened. And he saw that they were eating these red cherries off of a tree, and it gave them a burst of life that he hadn't seen in his goats before. And then he himself was like, well, what's good for the goats? It's good for the goat herder. And from there, coffee was essentially discovered. Now, we don't know how true that story is, but in the 6th century, coffee is discovered and brought to different countries like Yemen, and then transferred over to Central and South America and grown. Pretty much we like to refer to it as the bean belt. It wasn't until about, I believe, the 12th century that we even began to roast coffee and consume coffee the way we do today. The roasting process takes anywhere from 9 to 15 minutes, and we do it manually here. So everything that we're doing is based off of what we're seeing and what we're smelling in the roasting process. So this is a coffee trier. So as we're going through the roasting process, we're actually pulling this guy out, and we're seeing the coffee as it develops from green to yellow to gold to brown. You smell the coffee as it comes off, because as it, like anything, as it's developing, as it goes through that Maillard effect, it starts to take on these rich, sweet kind of notes. I liken it to if you've ever walked around a carnival and you get that intense smell of a fresh waffle cone being produced. That is the peak point when I'm oh, this coffee is going to be really sweet at the end. This roaster was also built in 1937.
Wow.
It is one of only 2 models that I know of that are still producing coffee today.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's good quality.
We roasted last year our first 1 million pounds in a year on it.
Delicious.
Thank you.
Now that I've had my caffeine fix, I still need to satisfy my tastes for a more traditional pastry. But where can I find that here in St. Louis? Sitting here in a room in St. Louis, and I just so happened to see this book. It was up here, Culinary. That's a great book, by the way, a great cookbook. This story is about Denmark, and this is my past. I'm looking at this picture, and it's my dad in the book. And I mean, what's the chances of finding this book on this very shelf in St. Louis next to this book, St. Louis Then and Now? I mean, here I am exploring all this wonderful food. It keeps teaching me things, how we're forever connected to the past. You know, I don't know, is it an omen or is it a lesson? We're here in Botanical Heights. This is such a great neighborhood. Oleo, Indo, a lot of things happening right here in this corner. So we are visiting La Patisserie Choquette. La Patisserie Choquette seems to be the next natural place to explore. Of course, I'm initially drawn by the French name, but the reputation of Choquette precedes my arrival. The French-named shop specializes in the decadent and whimsical side of desserts, and it's known for specialties like the ever-popular macaron or the fabled darkness, a layered chocolate croissant. But La Choquette is also known for its cakes. Simone is waiting for us. Hello.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Hey.
Walking into the shop brings a flood of memories back to life for me. This is Simone Foray, owner of La Choquette and the creative talent behind the desserts that it's become known for. Alone in her process, Simone is a consummate artist and treats her craft as such, keeping the hollow ground of her workspace sacred by keeping it private. Perhaps to even be here while she works is an intrusion of her creative process. But still, she welcomes me inside for the morning to compare notes and talk about our shared love for choux paste and sugar. So we're making macaroons. Yes.
We are making macaron.
Yeah. In Danish, it's macron.
Say that again?
Macron.
Say it slowly.
Macron.
Oh, macron.
Yes.
Oh, how is that spelled?
Well, I have to remember, it's been a long time, but...
But it's the almond version, not the coconut?
That's the only kind I know.
The almond.
The almond kind, yeah. It's almost like it's gotten a renaissance because I don't never remember putting any food color in any of the macaroons we used to make in my dad's pastry shop. It was more like fillings and everything, and then I can see now everywhere in the world now that people are putting colors on it. So it must have gotten some kind of renaissance, and I'm thinking, are you the one that started all that?
It wasn't
you?
me. No.
It wasn't you? Okay.
No. Although I will gladly take credit. I can't imagine not having colorful macaron. Like, that's a part of the fantasy of it. Like, they're colorful and they're fun. It's a part of their personality, you know?
So is this your favorite pastry to cook, you think?
I think of every single thing that we make, this is where you have the most room for creativity. It can be whatever you want it to be.
Did you always want to be a pastry chef?
Oh, God, no. I wanted to marry well.
Yeah.
And settle into that lifestyle. I did not grow up in the kitchen. Like, you know, you'll hear stories about people who their moms and grandmoms were great cooks, and my mother was phenomenal. My grandmother was great with desserts, not so much with savory foods. But we were not allowed in the kitchen. It didn't happen unless you were doing dishes. If you were doing dishes, hang out all day if you want to. So this is the part where it's, you know, a little noisy, but just to kind of knock a few bubbles out. I always feel bad for the people who live upstairs.
What is that you're putting on top there?
These are candied hazelnuts, or as the French would say, renown. And so it's just another way to give some texture and personality. And then the inside of this will be filled with a delicious chai tea filling.
How did you end up in St. Louis?
So I was looking for a change of pace. I'd been in New Orleans. I'd been working at the Ritz in Naples and then back to New Orleans again. And
I mean, I can tell you a little bit of a Francophile, right?
I mean, a little. I am from New Orleans,
Yeah.
and so there's a connection that's there without having to nurture it. It's just sort of, it's natural, right?
Yeah, it's part of it down there.
The biggest one would be, the name of the shop is Choquette.
Yeah, shoe
It's a
paste.
shoe pastry.
Yeah, shoe pastry with sugar on it, right?
It does. It has rock sugar
Yeah.
on top. And when we first opened the shop and we made them, everybody said, "What is this? There's no cream in this." I'm like, I wanted to change. My husband was working at the Ritz-Carlton in the Grand Caymans at the time. And so we tried to figure out, you know, like, we're married. How can we be in the same country at the same time? St. Louis opened up one day, and it was just there in front of me. And I was like, I've never been to St. Louis before. And my husband said, oh, it sounds French.
Yeah.
And so I applied, and the next day I had a contract in front of me, and I was like, well, sure, why not? Like, we'll go. St. Louis has this French history, but I feel more of a German vibe here, I would definitely say, than the French vibe. Although the street names are nearly identical to the names in New Orleans, but pronounced completely differently.
Yeah, I mean, it confuses me because I know French, and when I say it, everybody looks at me like he doesn't know what he's talking about.
I refuse to say gravois. I'm like, there's an S in that. What are you talking about? That clearly says gravois.
Yeah, exactly.
Even Siri is somehow convinced that it's gravois. I'm like, how much do they have to pay her?
Well, I mean, what do Siri know?
I remember when I was leaving the Ritz, and it was, aren't you scared, like, what if the business fails? And I, thought about it for a second, and I'm like, I'm more afraid of not trying.
Yeah.
Like, if we open on the first day, if those doors open and the first customer walks in, it worked.
The quality of what you're doing is what drives the business, and that's the whole thing. There's love behind it.
I agree, 100%.
I don't know if you ever heard the term food is love.
I've heard it someplace.
Yeah, and that's why.
But I love the fact that I can call Nathaniel over at Nathaniel Reed's, Christy over at Pint Size Bakery. She and I work together at, in the kitchen at the Ritz in New Orleans. Like, yeah, it's awesome. Or the phone will ring and it'll be someone who wants something that we don't make. And I'll say, oh, where you can get this is not too far from here. Rain over at Sweet Art makes a wonderful version of this. The same thing happens the other way. Like, they refer people to us. It's great. Like, and I have never seen that anyplace else. So that's love.
Yeah.
Like, that is love. And then we all sit together and cry in January when business dries up because everybody's on a diet.
We're that certain breed of people in the restaurant business. You have to be a certain kind of person or personality. I think that something went wrong when we were created because we're all a little crazy.
Or maybe it went well.
Or maybe it went well. Yeah, I like that version better.
And something's wrong with everyone.
What else? I wish my dad were still alive and he was with me today. He would love you.
Oh.
He was just the pastry chef of all pastry chefs. I mean, he was thinking about cakes 24/7. Even though my visit here was planned, it has been special to me personally. The conversation, the process, and the taste, all reminders of where I'm from. It demonstrates that if you stop to pay attention, the common fibers that hold people together are the same everywhere. It may look different or have a different taste or method, but hot coffee with a flaky pastry or a warm donut feels the same regardless of where you have it in the world. Food has the ability to reconnect us with past experiences and feelings.
It's very important that the chocolate is warm.
The moment that I walked into Choquette, I was 18 again and working beside my father. There may be oceans and decades between now and then, But to meet people like Vincent, who create with their hands and dough every day, really brings me back.
The pastry stuff, like your father and you, the artistry behind it.
It's good for my soul. I think of the things I learned in the kitchen with my father. It ended up being more than just cooking lessons. They were life lessons.
It's art of the pastry kitchen.
I learned that food can convey feelings, memories, and emotions. As simple as it can seem, it's not just a cup of coffee or a donut. Someone cared enough about the process and took the time to make it. For you. Patisserie swans with a mocha cream. I think that says it all and proves food is love.
The cake is finished with whipped cream.
Almond in the bottom, orange chocolate mousse, and apricot marinade in orange liqueur.